Hello, friends. Tonight, we embark on a quiet exploration of how news and information flowed across medieval Europe, long before the invention of the printing press and flame wars on social media. So, before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where in the world you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights. Perhaps light an incense or two for that soothing fragrance. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Picture this, a world steeped in silence, a time when the clamor of countless printing presses was yet an unfathomable whisper in the distant future. Close your eyes and allow your mind to drift back to an era where the spread of an idea, the announcement of a royal decree, or the tidings from a faraway land was an intricate dance of human connection and ingenious, yet often slow, method of transmission. We will explore this fascinating landscape, following the unseen paths of royal messengers, the hushed whispers of gossiping merchants, the melodic tales of wandering minstrels, and the resonant echoes of church sermons as they carried tidings across cities, kingdoms, and continents. This is a tale of rumor, of rhythm, and of relay, all told with soothing details to ease you into a peaceful night's rest. Imagine yourself in the heart of medieval Europe, perhaps in a bustling market square, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and wood smoke, the distant clang of a blacksmith hammer providing a rhythmic backdrop to the murmur of voices. You look around, and you notice something profound, something that would feel utterly alien to our modern sensibilities. There are no newspapers being hawked, no posters announcing public events, no easily digestible pamphlets sharing the latest royal decree. The very concept of widespread, accessible written information, as we know it, simply did not exist. This was a world, for the vast majority, where news arrived not through the silent page, but through the spoken word. Consider the texture of communication in such a time. When a traveler arrived in a village, dusty from the road, their very presence was a potential conduit for news. A fresh face, a new accent, an unfamiliar cloak, each an unspoken promise of tidings from beyond the familiar horizon. Villagers would gather, perhaps around a crackling hearth in a common hall, or beneath the shade of a large oak in the village square, eager to hear what stories the newcomer carried. Was there news of the harvest in the next valley? Had the local lord issued a new decree? Was there talk of distant wars? Or perhaps a royal wedding? Every utterance, every overheard whisper, every shared anecdote contributed to the slow-moving mosaic of understanding. This was the intricate dance of oral culture, a delicate ballet where memory and repetition were paramount, and where the precise wording of a message could shift subtly from one teller to the next, like a stone smoothed by a flowing river. Now, turn your mind to the written word itself. If you were to walk through a medieval town, venturing beyond the lively market and into the quieter streets, you might eventually come across a monastery, its stone walls exuding a sense of ancient permanence. Within those walls, in hushed scriptoria, dedicated monks labored over parchment. Here, the written word existed, but it was a precious, almost sacred commodity, far removed from the everyday lives of most people. Books were not mass-produced objects. Each one was a painstaking creation, requiring immense time, skill, and resources. Imagine the scratch of a quill on vellum, the careful mixing of pigments for illuminated initials, the hours spent meticulously copying ancient texts or official documents. Each book, each manuscript, was a unique work of art, a testament to human dedication. This inherent rarity made books incredibly expensive. Only the wealthiest individuals, kings, powerful nobles, high-ranking churchmen, could afford to commission or acquire such treasures. A single manuscript could represent years of a laborious wages, a king's ransom in its own right. Thus, the knowledge contained within these pages remained largely sequestered, a privilege of the elite, rather than a common good. It was not simply a matter of cost. It was also a matter of access and purpose. These texts were often theological treatises, legal codes, historical chronicles, or classical literature, not the rapid-fire dissemination of current events. And then, we consider the very act of reading itself. For the vast majority of medieval society, the ability to decipher the intricate symbols on a page was an unknown skill. Illiteracy was not a mark of ignorance, but simply the prevailing norm. Imagine trying to navigate a world where signs, instructions, and public announcements were largely unintelligible to you. Your understanding of the world would be shaped by what you heard, what you saw, and what was communicated directly to you by those who held positions of authority or had access to information. This fundamental reality meant that any news intended for the general populace had to be spoken, proclaimed, or performed. The concept of reading the news was a luxury, a specialized skill confined to a very select few. In this landscape of limited literacy and precious manuscripts, the Church emerged as the primary custodian of written knowledge. Monasteries, with their scriptoria and libraries, were islands of learning in a sea of oral tradition. Within their quiet cloisters, monks preserved ancient texts, copied religious scriptures, and sometimes even meticulously recorded local histories and chronicles. These churchmen, by virtue of their education and their spiritual authority, held a unique position. They were often the most literate members of a community, capable of understanding and interpreting written decrees, papal bulls, and scholarly works. The Church's influence extended far beyond the walls of the monastery. Through its network of cathedrals, abbeys, and parish churches, it served as a vital artery for the flow of information. Bishops and priests, often educated in Latin and possessing an understanding of written documents, acted as conduits, translating complex messages from the written word into the vernacular, the common language spoken by the people. They would announce decrees from the pulpit, interpret news from distant lands, and convey the will of both secular and ecclesiastical rulers. The rhythm of church bells, too, played its part, signaling not only times for prayer but also moments of emergency, celebration, or mourning, a sonic form of news in a pre-literate age. So, as you allow your thoughts to drift, consider this quiet landscape. A world where news was carried on the breath of storytellers, the murmur of the market, the solemn pronouncements of the clergy. A world where the written word was a rare and treasured artifact, a testament to immense labor and a symbol of power and privilege. The silence of the medieval page speaks volumes about the vibrant, yet profoundly different, ways in which information wove its way through the lives of those who came before us. It was a world shaped by the cadences of speech, the echo of rumor, and the steady, unhurried pace of life itself. It fostered a sense of localized awareness, where the concerns of the immediate community often overshadowed events occurring hundreds of miles away. So, as we prepare to move beyond this quiet understanding of a world without widespread printing, allow yourself to feel the subtle contrast. Imagine the comfort of knowing that information, while slow, often carried the weight of personal delivery, the resonance of a human voice, the shared experience of its transmission. This was a time when news was less about instantaneous consumption and more about patient unfolding, a gentle narrative woven into the fabric of daily life. The silence of the page, in its own way, amplified the significance of every spoken word, every shared tale, and every precious written document. As the gentle mists of morning gave way to the practical demands of the day, so too did the reliance on casual word of mouth give way to more structured and deliberate systems for transmitting vital news. In a world without the click of a button or the instant flicker of a screen, the most reliable conduits for important messages were human beings, individuals who embraced the arduous task of carrying words across vast and often challenging landscapes. Imagine, for a moment, the rhythm of their lives, a constant struggle against distance and delay, their journeys forging the very networks of information that held medieval society together. At the apex of this human network were the royal and ecclesiastical messengers. These were not casual travelers, but professional couriers, men, and occasionally women, entrusted with messages of immense significance. They served kings and queens, powerful nobles, and the influential figures of the church, their every journey laden with the weight of political decrees, military orders, or religious pronouncements. Picture a lone rider, cloaked against the elements, urging his horse along a muddy track, a sealed scroll tucked securely within his satchel. His mission was paramount, to deliver his message faithfully and swiftly, regardless of the obstacles he might encounter. Their lives were defined by the road, by the rhythmic thud of hooves or the steady pace of their own feet, by the constant vigilance required to protect their precious cargo. These messengers often utilized pilgrim paths and established trade routes, not merely for convenience, but because these arteries of travel inadvertently became conduits for news. Consider the weary pilgrim, journeying for faith to a distant shrine like Canterbury or Santiago de Compostela. While their primary purpose was spiritual, they inevitably carried stories and tidings from their home regions to the places they visited, and brought back news of the world beyond their local horizons. Similarly, merchants, navigating the routes of commerce, exchanged not only goods but also gossip, rumors, and vital economic information, effectively becoming walking newspapers for the towns they visited. The gentle hum of conversation in a bustling market square, the hushed whispers in and after a long day's travel, all serve to propagate news through these informal yet highly effective channels. For urgent messages, particularly those of royal or military importance, a sophisticated system of mounted relays might be employed. This was a remarkable logistical feat for its time. Imagine a series of waypoints, often small settlements or fortified outposts, strategically spaced along key routes. A messenger would ride hard to the first waypoint, deliver his message, and then a fresh rider, with a fresh horse, would immediately take up the journey, carrying the message onward to the next relay. This allowed for continuous, rapid transmission over long distances, minimizing the time lost due to rider fatigue or exhausted horses. Picture the swift exchange, the brief moments of hurried instruction, and then the thundering departure of a new rider, disappearing down the road, his purpose clear and urgent. This was the medieval equivalent of a high-speed express service, a testament to the ingenuity born of necessity. The messages themselves often took the form of sealed letters and scrolls. Imagine the careful preparation, the parchment, smooth and pale, bearing the meticulously penned words of a king or a bishop. Once written, the document would be carefully rolled or folded, and then sealed with wax, bearing the impression of a unique signet ring or official stamp. This wax seal was more than just a closure. It was a guarantee of authenticity and a deterrent against tampering. To break the seal before reaching the intended recipient was a serious offense, ensuring the integrity of the message. This physical act of sealing, the gentle pressure of the ring into warm wax, was a ritual of trust and authority, a quiet assurance that the message within was genuine. Yet, despite their vital role, these messengers faced a myriad of challenges and dangers. The medieval landscape was not always a welcoming one. Imagine the perils of travel, roads that were little more than muddy tracks, susceptible to the whims of weather. Heavy rains could turn a gentle path into an impassable bog, while winter snows could completely isolate communities. Beyond the natural elements, there was the ever-present threat of bandits and highwaymen, lurking in dense forests or along desolate stretches of road, eager to relieve travelers of their valuables, indeed, their valuable dispatches. A messenger might also face the challenges of navigating through unfamiliar territories, relying on rudimentary maps, local knowledge, or the distant spies of a church to guide their way. Their journeys were often solitary, arduous, and fraught with risk, a testament to their dedication and the importance of their cargo. Consider, too, the slow, rhythmic pace of their journeys. A day's travel might cover only 20 or 30 miles, depending on the terrain, the condition of the roads, and the endurance of their horse. News from a distant kingdom could take weeks, even months, to arrive, subject to every delay and every obstacle along the way. This inherent slowness meant that news was often regional, filtered through local understanding, and its urgency might diminish with every passing day. The distant rumble of war might be heard as a faint echo by the time it reached a remote village, its impact softened by the passage of time. Life was a constant struggle, a relentless cycle of daily tasks, and the arrival of news, while often significant, rarely disrupted the fundamental rhythms of existence. Consider the ever-present threat of a failed harvest, leading to hunger, or the sudden outbreak of a plague that could decimate a community. These were the very real hardships that shaped the context in which news was received. Despite these challenges, the web of messengers, both official and informal, formed the lifeblood of medieval communication. They were the threads that wove together the disparate parts of society, connecting kings with their subjects, merchants with their distant markets, and families separated by miles. Their journeys, whether by swift horse or patient foot, created a human network that, while slow by modern standards, was remarkably effective in its own context. Imagine the quiet satisfaction of a messenger, finally delivering his sealed dispatch, knowing that he had bridged a gap of distance and time, connecting one distant point to another. Their silent dedication, their endurance against the elements and the dangers of the road, kept the pulse of information beating across the medieval landscape. This gentle reflection on their tireless efforts invites us to appreciate the profound difference their labor made in an age where every word carried weight, and every journey was a vital link in the chain of communication. While the spoken word and the tireless efforts of messengers formed the broad rivers of medieval information, there existed a quieter, more formal current, the written word. Primarily accessible to the literate elite, these meticulously crafted documents and carefully copied texts represented a slower, yet more enduring, method of news transmission. Imagine the hushed reverence surrounding a carefully penned letter or weighty chronicle, objects of profound significance in a world where literacy was a prized and rare skill. At the heart of this written world lay the monastic scriptoria. Within the serene walls of monasteries, dedicated monks devoted their lives to the laborious task of copying and disseminating texts. These scriptoria were not simply copying houses. They were vital centers for the preservation of knowledge, where chronicles, religious texts, and official decrees were painstakingly reproduced. Picture the rhythmic scratch of quill on parchment, the gentle turning of a page, the focused concentration of a monk bent over his work, meticulously forming each letter. This slow, deliberate process meant that each book, each scroll, was a treasure, a testament to immense human effort and devotion. These documents often included historical chronicles, which, while not news in our modern sense, serve as records of significant events, passing information about dynastic changes, major battles, or significant religious occurrences down through generations. Beyond the monastic walls, personal correspondence played a crucial role among the literate. Letters, painstakingly written and often carried by private messengers or trusted travelers, serve as a primary method for individuals and institutions to share news. Imagine a noble sending a letter to a neighboring lord, detailing the outcome of a recent battle or discussing a marriage alliance. Or a merchant writing to his distant trading partner, conveying information about market prices or the arrival of goods. These letters were more than mere greetings. They were conduits of vital information, shaping political landscapes, influencing economic decisions, and binding families across distances. The very act of receiving a letter, breaking its wax seal, and deciphering its contents would have been an event, a quiet moment of connection to the wider world. Official proclamations and charters further illustrate the importance of the written word for formal news dissemination. When a king issued a new law, a decree, or granted a charter to a town, these documents were carefully written out, often on parchment, and then officially sealed. While these might eventually be read aloud in public squares, their initial form was written, serving as the authoritative source of the information. Imagine the solemn act of a royal herald unrolling a grand parchment, bearing the king's seal, before an assembled crowd. The words on that parchment, even if inaccessible to most through reading, carried the undeniable weight of royal authority, disseminating news of new laws, changes in governance, or significant royal decisions. These documents were the foundational news items of state, ensuring that the king's will and pronouncements were formally communicated across his realm. However, it is crucial to gently acknowledge the inherent limitation of literacy during this period. Written news, despite its formality and permanence, was primarily for the educated few. The vast majority of the population could not read, meaning that even a perfectly copied chronicle or beautifully penned letter would remain a silent object to them. This meant that the spread of written information was inherently slow, filtered through those who could read and then often recommunicated orally to the wider populace. A royal decree, once written, might still take weeks to reach distant villages, and its ultimate understanding by the common folk would depend on a priest or local official reading it aloud and explaining its contents. The journey of the written word, though stately, was often a long and measured one. Imagine the harsh realities of limited medical knowledge, where even a simple infection could be life-threatening, or the ever-present threat of brigands making travel perilous. These were the concrete realities, the lived experiences that shaped how news was received and understood. The very process of producing written text was slow and labor-intensive, contributing to the limited reach of written news. Imagine the hours dedicated to preparing the parchment, mixing the inks, and the painstaking act of transcription itself. This was not a world of mass production. It was a world of individual, deliberate creation. The monasteries, in particular, served not only as centers of copying but also as hubs for the exchange of written information between different religious houses and even with secular powers. Letters between abbots, or documents detailing theological debates, would quietly move between these learned communities, shaping the intellectual and spiritual landscape of the age. Imagine a scholar in one monastery patiently awaiting a response to a theological query he had posed in a letter sent months ago to a distant abbey. This measured pace allowed for deeper contemplation and less immediate reaction, a stark contrast to our own rapid-fire information age. This quiet reliance on scribes and scrolls, while limited in its immediate reach, laid the groundwork for future advancements in communication. It instilled a respect for the written word as a record of truth and authority, and it meticulously preserved the narratives of the past, however slowly they traveled. As we gently move from the formal world of parchment and ink, allow yourself to appreciate the patient dedication of those who painstakingly committed knowledge to page, ensuring that whispers of history, news of their world, and the very fabric of their understanding would survive the passage of time. Beyond the formal systems of royal couriers and monastic scribes, the vibrant pulse of medieval life offered countless informal avenues for news to travel. For the common folk, who rarely encountered a sealed letter or a hand-copied chronicle, news often arrived with a merchant's cart, the traveler's tale, or the shared warmth of a bustling inn. Imagine the sounds and smells of these communal spaces, the low murmur of conversation, the clinking of tankards, the rich aroma of stew, all mingled with the fascinating, ever-changing currents of human chatter. The merchant's mouth, quite literally, served as a vital conduit of information. As traders crisscrossed the medieval landscape, moving goods from one town to another, they inevitably carried more than just their wares. They brought with them stories, rumors, and vital economic tidings from distant places. Imagine a merchant arriving in a new market, his cart laden with spices from the east or wool from a far-off pasture. As he unpacked his goods, he would also unpack the latest news. Whispers of a new tax levied by a distant lord, accounts of a successful harvest in another region, or even the unfolding drama of a local feud he'd heard about along the road. These conversations in the marketplace were crucial, allowing news to spread organically through the networks of trade, connecting disparate communities through shared information. Even more potent than the marketplace for the dissemination of casual news were the inns and alehouses. These were the social hubs of medieval life, places where weary travelers sought rest and refreshment, and where locals gathered after a day's labor. Picture the smoky warmth of a common room, voices rising and falling, the clatter of plates. Here, amidst the conviviality, rumors flowed freely, and news was shaped by retelling. A returning soldier might share tales of a distant skirmish, a peddler might recount gossip from the last village he visited, or a farmer, having traveled to the county seat, might relay news of a royal decree. In these spaces, information was not static, it was dynamic, interpreted and embellished, forming a collective understanding of the wider world. The rhythmic clinking of tankards, the shared laughter, and the gentle murmur of conversation all contributed to this organic flow of information. The pilgrim's path, too, served as an unwitting avenue for news exchange. Thousands embarked on journeys of faith to revered shrines across Europe, from the tomb of St. James in Santiago de Compostela to the relics of Thomas Becket in Canterbury. These pilgrims, hailing from diverse regions, carried stories from their homes and gathered new tales as they traveled. Imagine groups of pilgrims walking together, sharing stories around a communal fire at night, or exchanging information as they rested at a wayside hostel. They brought news of local miracles, political shifts in their home regions, or even accounts of significant events they'd witnessed along their journey. Upon their return, these pilgrims became local celebrities, their experiences and the news they carried enriching the knowledge of their communities. Their journeys, though spiritual in intent, inextricably linked distant lands through the shared human desire to communicate and understand. Gently reflect on how one person's journey could ripple across borders through conversation. A simple anecdote shared by a traveler in an inn could be carried by another, and then another, slowly spreading outwards like ripples in a pond. This was a natural, unforced movement of information among the common folk, often without any official intent, yet profoundly effective in shaping public awareness. The power of these informal networks lay in their ubiquity. They existed wherever people gathered, wherever journeys were undertaken, wherever conversations unfolded. Imagine the challenge of predicting the weather without modern instruments, a vital piece of information for farmers whose livelihoods depended entirely on it. Consider the ever-present threat of localized famine due to poor harvests, where news of grain prices in a neighboring village could be a matter of survival. These were the concrete realities, the lived experiences that shaped how news was received and understood. The information shared in markets and inns was often immediately practical, concerning matters that directly impacted daily existence. These vibrant, often boisterous, spaces, the marketplace and the inn, were far more than just points of commerce or rest. They were the unofficial news agencies of medieval Europe, where information, though sometimes distorted or embellished, flowed freely through the voices of ordinary people. The rhythmic murmur of their conversations, the shared laughter, and the earnest exchange of vital details allowed the medieval world to stay connected, one whispered word at a time. This gentle observation invites us to appreciate the organic and deeply human ways in which knowledge permeated society, often without the need for formal decree or official dispatch. In the quiet cadence of medieval life, amidst the clatter of markets and the murmur of inns, there was another powerful and pervasive channel through which news, both spiritual and secular, flowed: the church. Its influence reached into every corner of society. Its spiritual authority often intertwined with civic governance, and its regular gatherings became essential hubs for shaping public awareness through sermons, feast days, and ritual announcements. Imagine the solemn yet comforting toll of church bells echoing across the fields, calling the faithful to gather, and in doing so, preparing them to receive not only profound spiritual guidance but also vital information about their world, connecting the sacred with the mundane in a truly unique manner. This chapter will dive deep into the multifaceted role of the church as a primary, widespread, and deeply ingrained source of news and information dissemination. Sermons, delivered from the revered pulpit, often served as crucial news hubs, functioning in many ways as the medieval equivalent of a community bulletin board, amplified by the weight of divine authority. While their primary focus remained steadfastly on religious instruction, moral guidance, and theological exposition, priests and other clergy members frequently utilized this platform to inform their congregations about matters that extended far beyond the purely spiritual realm. Imagine the parishioners, perhaps weary from a week of arduous labor, gathered in the nave of their local church, listening intently as the priest, standing elevated and authoritative, might announce a royal order that had just arrived from a distant capital, its implications perhaps affecting their taxes or military service. Or he might speak of a looming famine in a neighboring region, urging prayers for those afflicted, and perhaps organizing communal efforts for aid or precautions within their own village. The priest could share news of a distant war, perhaps a new crusade being called by the Pope, inspiring fervor or eliciting fear, detailing the efforts of kings and knights. Alternatively, he might address a local dispute that required communal attention and resolution, using his moral authority to mediate or guide public opinion. This direct, often weekly, address to a large, captive audience ensured that important information, particularly that impacting the local community or broader society, was disseminated widely, authoritatively, and with a significant degree of persuasive power. The priest's voice, though calm and measured in its delivery, carried the undeniable weight of both religious and civic responsibility, making his words impactful and memorable. The act of gathering for Mass was not merely an act of faith. It was a communal experience of information exchange, where the sacred and the secular seamlessly intertwined. Feast days and other significant announcements were inextricably tied to the church calendar, providing predictable and widely attended occasions for the transmission of news. Major events, whether local or distant, affecting the lives of the populace, were often revealed, celebrated, or emphasized during these communal religious gatherings. Imagine the joy and communal spirit of a patron saint's feast day, bringing together people from surrounding hamlets and farms, many of whom might only see each other on such occasions. Amidst the celebrations, the solemn religious observances, and the communal feasting, the priest might choose at opportune moment to announce a new tax decreed by the local lord, giving the official word to a broad swathe of the population. He might inform them of a forthcoming visit from a bishop or an important dignitary, preparing the community for their arrival. Or, perhaps, he would convey news of a significant birth or death within the ruling family, events that carried political implications and required public acknowledgement. The sacred space of the church, imbued with spiritual significance, and the inherent communal nature of these religious festivals, provided an ideal setting for the dissemination of important information, embedding news within the familiar and deeply respected rhythms of religious life. These events were not just spiritual, they were social and informational anchors for the community. And then, there was the church bell's toll, a profound, non-verbal auditory form of messaging that transcended the spoken word and reached far beyond the church walls, even to those unable to attend services. Imagine the sudden, urgent, and irregular clang of the church bell, a sound instantly recognized across the fields and through the villages as a signal of immediate danger, perhaps a devastating fire engulfing a nearby dwelling, an approaching raiding party from a rival lord's lands, or the ominous threat of an unexpected invasion. Conversely, a joyful, rhythmic, and consistent peal would signify a cause for celebration, a wedding uniting two families, a major feast day calling everyone to communal worship and festivity, or the momentous coronation of a new monarch, bringing hope and stability. A slow, mournful, and deliberate toll would mark a death within the community, signaling a funeral procession, or simply marking a general period of mourning for a significant loss. These bells, heard for miles around in the quiet medieval landscape, were the medieval world's alarm system, its joyful announcements, its somber reflections, and its regular markers of time. They communicated vital information through sound alone, reaching even those who were tending their flocks in distant pastures or working in remote fields. The very air carried the news, resonating with the emotions of the message, creating a shared understanding without the need for spoken words. The clergy, by virtue of their education, their literacy, and their respected position within the community, often served as trusted, albeit sometimes biased, messengers of truth. People looked to their priests not only for spiritual guidance and the promise of salvation, but also for reliable information and interpretation about the world beyond their immediate village. While a priest might interpret events through a theological lens, framing them within a divine plan, or emphasize aspects that reinforce church doctrine and communal harmony, their word carried significant weight and moral authority. Imagine a priest carefully and patiently explaining the implications of a new tithe or feudal obligation, helping his flock understand their duties, or reassuring his parishioners amidst terrifying rumors of plague or famine, offering spiritual comfort alongside practical advice. Their gentle, yet authoritative voice, often the most educated in the village, could quell anxieties, stir communal action, or provide solace, demonstrating the immense power they wielded in shaping public awareness and opinion, and in translating complex external events into digestible, relevant information for their flock. Imagine the challenge of enduring a long, brutally cold winter, when news of relief supplies or a break in the weather was eagerly awaited and could mean the difference between survival and starvation. Consider the ever-present uncertainty of feudal obligations, when news of a lord's demands for service or tribute, perhaps for a distant military campaign, could profoundly impact a family's meager livelihood and require difficult decisions about their future. These were the concrete realities, the lived experiences that shaped how news was received and understood, often filtered through the lens of immediate survival. The Church, through its consistent presence and its weekly gatherings, provided a stable, predictable, and trusted platform for delivering information that directly impacted these daily struggles, offering both spiritual sustenance and practical guidance. Moreover, the Church's vast and intricate network of monasteries, cathedrals, and parish churches, spanning across kingdoms and continents, created an inherent and highly effective system for internal information exchange. Letters between bishops, official papal bulls issued from Rome, and news of ecclesiastical appointments or theological disputes would constantly travel along these religious pathways, ensuring that the Church itself was a highly informed institution, often possessing information weeks or months before secular authorities in remote areas. This internal flow of information within the Church often influenced the news that was then shared with the wider congregation, filtering down from the highest echelons of power to the local parish priest, who would then translate it for his community. The rhythmic cycle of feast days, the solemn yet regular delivery of sermons, and the pervasive sound of bell tolls created a predictable and ingrained framework for news dissemination, providing a regular and often the most reliable source of information in a world where other channels were frequently sporadic, informal, and less authoritative. The very infrastructure of the Church served as a vast, living communication network, deeply embedded in the social and spiritual landscape. As we gently delve from the solemn echoes of the pulpit and the resonant peal of the bells, allow yourself to appreciate the profound and enduring role of the Church in medieval communication. It was not merely a spiritual guide, leading souls toward salvation, but a central pillar in the flow of information, shaping understanding, reinforcing authority, and connecting communities through its unwavering presence and its trusted voice. The word from the pulpit, carried on the air and etched into the minds of the faithful, was a powerful, comforting, and constant source of news in a world that profoundly craved connection and guidance. Its reach was unmatched, its authority rarely questioned, making it an indispensable part of the medieval news landscape. Beyond the solemn pronouncements of the Church and the measured exchanges of merchants, news in medieval Europe often arrived cloaked in the guise of entertainment. In a world where formal channels were limited and literacy was rare, the power of performance, through song, story, and public display, became a surprisingly effective, albeit less direct, method of disseminating information. Imagine the vibrant energy of a town square suddenly captivated by a storyteller, or the hushed anticipation before a theatrical performance. These were moments when news, seamlessly interwoven with entertainment, found its way into the minds and hearts of the common folk. Traveling minstrels and bards were among the most potent forces in this informal news network. These versatile entertainers roamed from village to village, from castle to market fair, carrying with them a repertoire of songs, poems, and tales. Imagine a minstrel with his lute, his voice filling the air as he recounts a ballad of a recent battle, subtly weaving in details about the valiant lords involved or the consequences of the conflict. They would often incorporate current events or local gossip into their performances, making their stories immediately relevant and engaging to their audiences. A seemingly simple folk song might carry news of a change in feudal overlordship, or a humorous ditty might subtly mock a local official's recent folly. The power of music and rhyme meant that these narratives were memorable and easily passed on, spreading information far more widely than dry reports ever could. The rhythm of their verses, the captivating melodies, ensured that the news embedded within them lingered in the collective memory. Mystery plays and morality plays, integral to medieval religious life, also served a fascinating dual purpose: spiritual instruction and subtle, or not so subtle, communication of news. These theatrical productions, often performed by guilds or church groups, depicted biblical stories or allegories of good versus evil. However, within their narratives, playwrights could subtly, or even overtly, convey political or social news. Imagine a play depicting a tyrannical king from biblical times, whose actions mirrored those of an unpopular local lord, thereby subtly communicating discontent. Or a morality play emphasizing communal responsibility, perhaps in response to a recent plague or famine, reminding the audience of their duties to one another. While primarily didactic, these plays engaged large audiences, and their memorable characters and dramatic plots made them effective vehicles for sharing collective concerns or subtly influencing public opinion. The gentle unfolding of a dramatic narrative allowed complex ideas, including current events, to be absorbed. Public executions and tournaments, though grim or spectacular in nature, were also unwitting hubs of news exchange. These spectacles drew massive crowds, bringing together people from diverse backgrounds and distant regions. Imagine the buzz of anticipation surrounding a grand tournament, with knights arriving from various lordships. As people gathered, they inevitably exchanged news, gossip, and rumors. Before an execution, a public reading of the condemned crimes served as a form of official news about law and order, while the assembled crowd would undoubtedly share their own opinions and any related stories they had heard. These were not merely events to be watched. They were occasions for vibrant social interaction, where information flowed freely amongst the spectators, often shaping and reshaping the collective understanding of events. The sheer volume of people ensured that any significant news shared that would ripple outwards. The power of performance, whether through a memorable song or a captivating theatrical production, allowed information to spread more widely than dry reports. The emotional connection forged through entertainment meant that messages, even complex ones, could be absorbed and retained by a largely illiterate population. Imagine the echoes of a newly composed ballad, carried by travelers and sung in distant taverns, its lyrics subtly relaying news of a significant victory or devastating defeat. This indirect method of communication was incredibly effective because it was engaging, memorable, and effortlessly integrated into the fabric of daily life. The rhythmic repetition of a chorus, or the dramatic portrayal of a character, ensured that the core message, often related to current affairs, resonated deeply. Life was a constant struggle, a delicate balance between the rhythms of nature and the demands of feudal society. Instead of simply stating that life was hard, imagine the challenge of unifying disparate communities under a single ruler, where the ballads and plays could subtly foster a sense of shared identity or highlight common grievances. Consider the ever-present threat of inter-feudal conflict, where news of alliances or betrayals, conveyed through entertaining narratives, could impact local loyalties and preparations. These were the concrete realities, the lived experiences that shaped how news was received and understood. Entertainment, in this context, was not merely distraction. It was a vital tool for understanding, influencing, and connecting. As we gently delve into the captivating world where entertainment became the bearer of news, allow yourself to appreciate the ingenuity of a society that found ways to share vital information through joy, drama, and shared spectacle. These minstrels, actors, and public gatherings, often overlooked in the grand narratives of history, played an indispensable role in weaving the tapestry of medieval communication, ensuring that the stories of their time resonated far beyond the fleeting moment of performance. The inherent power of performance, whether through a memorable, easily repeatable song or a captivating theatrical production, allowed information to spread more widely and deeply than dry, written reports ever could in a largely illiterate society. The emotional and visceral connection forged through entertainment meant that messages, even complex ones related to political shifts or social issues, could be absorbed, discussed, and retained by a population that relied on oral traditions. Imagine the echoes of a newly composed ballad, perhaps celebrating a local hero or lamenting a tragic loss, carried by travelers and sung in distant taverns for weeks or months, its lyrics subtly relaying news of a significant victory, a devastating defeat, or a new economic opportunity. This indirect method of communication was incredibly effective precisely because it was engaging, memorable, and effortlessly integrated into the fabric of daily life, making information palatable and accessible. The rhythmic repetition of a chorus, the dramatic portrayal of a character's struggles, or the shared experience of a public spectacle ensured that the core message, often related to current affairs, resonated deeply and became part of the communal knowledge base. Imagine the challenge of unifying disparate communities under a single ruler, where the shared narratives of ballads and plays could subtly foster a sense of shared identity, shared grievances, or a common purpose against a distant threat. Consider the ever-present threat of inter-feudal conflict, where news of alliances or betrayals, conveyed through entertaining narratives, could impact local loyalties, influence decisions about refuge, and prompt preparations for defense. These were the concrete realities, the lived experiences that shaped how news was received, understood, and acted upon. Entertainment, in this context, was not merely a distraction from hardship. It was a vital, adaptive tool for understanding, influencing, and connecting individuals and communities in a world that lacked modern media. It provided a powerful means for collective memory and shared understanding to be forged. As we gently explore the captivating world where entertainment became the indispensable bearer of news, allow yourself to appreciate the profound ingenuity and adaptability of a society that found profound ways to share vital information through joy, drama, and shared spectacle. These minstrels, bards, actors, and public gatherings, often overlooked in the grand narratives of political and military history, played an indispensable, pervasive, and often understated role in weaving the vibrant tapestry of medieval communication, ensuring that the stories of their time resonated far beyond the fleeting moment of performance, shaping perceptions and connecting communities across vast distances and diverse cultures. As our quiet journey through the medieval landscape draws to a close, we arrive at a gentle reflection on the very nature of information flow in an age before instant communication. The myriad ways news traveled across medieval Europe, as we have explored, from the deliberate pace of royal messengers to the vibrant tales of minstrels, were ingenious and deeply human. Yet, they stand in stark contrast to our modern experience, where information saturates our lives instantaneously. Imagine, for a moment, the profound patience and the altered perception of time required of a world where news could take weeks or even months to traverse even relatively short distances, and how this shaped society itself. This inherent slowness of spread was arguably the most defining characteristic of medieval news, fundamentally altering its impact and reception. A significant event, such as a major royal decree issued from a distant capital, a crucial declaration from the Pope, or the definitive outcome of a major battle that could shift the balance of power, might take an eternity to ripple through the vast, fragmented tapestry of kingdoms, duchies, and countless isolated communities. Imagine a lone messenger on horseback, battling treacherous, often unpaved roads, enduring the whims of unpredictable weather, and facing the constant threat of bandits, all while carrying vital information that would be considered ancient history by today's lightning-fast standards by the time it finally reached its intended destination. This prolonged journey meant that news often arrived not as a sudden, shocking revelation, but as a gradual unfolding, its initial urgency muted and softened by the relentless passage of days, weeks, and even seasons. The rhythm of their daily lives, a constant struggle against the elements, illness, and the demands of feudal lords, often meant that immediate, local concerns, the success of the harvest, the safety of their village, the health of their families, overshadowed distant events, which arrived too late to be immediately acted upon. The concept of breaking news simply did not exist in the same way, fostering a more localized and reactive, rather than proactive, societal response to external happenings. Moreover, the very nature of oral transmission, which dominated information flow for the majority of the population, meant that the role of interpretation, embellishment, and even outright distortion was significant and unavoidable. As messages passed through many mouths, from a traveling merchant to an innkeeper, then to a local gossiper, and perhaps eventually to a wandering minstrel, each retelling had the potential to add a new detail, alter a perspective, subtly shift emphasis, or even wildly exaggerate a fact to make a story more captivating or align it with local prejudices. This iterative process of sharing created a rich, vibrant, yet often deeply unreliable, tapestry of information where absolute truth could be remarkably elusive, and achieving a universally accepted consensus on events became a monumental challenge. News was not a fixed, immutable entity. It was a fluid, organic narrative, constantly shaped and reshaped by the biases, fallible memories, and often deliberate intentions of those who carried and relayed it. This fluidity meant that information often adapted to local contexts, becoming more relevant to the immediate audience, but potentially less faithful to the original event. Yet, amidst this pervasive slowness and the inherent potential for distortion, there was a gradual, almost imperceptible, but ultimately profound shift towards more formalized written communication that unfolded over many centuries. While the revolutionary invention of the printing press in the mid-15th century would dramatically accelerate this trend, it was built upon the patient, painstaking work that preceded it. The dedicated labor of scribes within the quiet confines of monasteries painstakingly copying texts, the development of more sophisticated postal and courier systems specifically for royal and ecclesiastical bodies to ensure more reliable transmission of official documents, and the increasing reliance on written legal documents, charters, and deeds for records and governance all contributed to a slow but steady evolution away from purely oral traditions. Imagine the subtle satisfaction of encountering a carefully preserved scroll in a monastic library, knowing that its contents had endured for generations, a quiet, enduring testament to the growing value placed on the permanence, accuracy, and authority of the written word. This slow, deliberate march from predominantly oral traditions to more widespread written forms was a fundamental, if unhurried, transformation that laid the crucial groundwork for the informational revolutions that would eventually follow. Ultimately, this peaceful journey through medieval communication reminds us of an enduring human constant that transcends all technological advancements: the profound and insatiable desire for news, for understanding, and for connection. From the earliest whispers shared around a communal fire by our ancient ancestors, conveying vital information about hunts or dangers, to the rapid-fire, interconnected information streams of today, the fundamental human need to know what is happening, to understand its implications, and to share that knowledge with others has remained an unwavering impulse throughout history. Even as the methods and technologies have transformed almost beyond recognition, from the slow, deliberate pace of the messenger's footfall and the meticulous scratch of the scribe's pen to the instantaneous global networks of our present moment, the fundamental impulse to connect through shared information has persisted, a timeless aspect of the human condition. Life for medieval people was indeed a constant struggle, a delicate balance between the rhythms of nature, the unpredictable nature of disease, and the often harsh demands of feudal society. This enduring desire for news was not merely curiosity. It was often born out of sheer necessity, a fundamental need to understand threats to their safety, to identify opportunities for survival and prosperity, and to navigate the ever-changing social, political, and environmental landscape of their world. As we gently ease out of the medieval past and back into the soft comfort of the present, allow this quiet contemplation to settle over you. Reflect deeply on the profound difference between their world and ours, not just in terms of technological capability, but in the very feel of information, how it was acquired, how it was processed, and how it shaped the individual and collective experience. In the medieval era, news was less a commodity and more a journey, a communal endeavor, a patient unfolding that required presence and engagement. It teaches us a gentle, yet powerful, lesson about the value of time, the profound importance of human connection, the subtle art of interpretation, and the enduring rhythm of communication, a rhythm that, though transformed by millennia of innovation, continues to bind us together as a species. Let these peaceful echoes of the past guide you now into a tranquil and restful sleep, as the ancient quiet of their world gives way to the gentle hum of your own peaceful night, carrying with it the quiet wisdom of how news once shaped human lives.